Hi, I'm Rachel. Welcome to my book club. Vampires are my special interest book club. It's a little close to me. So on this channel, typically we read vampire anthologies, vampire short stories, like Dracula's Brood, the thing we read on Sundays. But I wanted to branch out a little bit because I think it's important to have a well-rounded literary circle when it comes to a special interest, not just reading the thing like vampires, but reading the things that help influence other people when they write vampires, such as the Gothic novel. So yeah, if you want like normal vampires are my special interest book club vampire content, I do lives on Sundays at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Tonight we're going to pick through the Castle of Otranto, supposedly the first Gothic novel, just to, like I said, better understand this thing that we love here by exploring the creation of the Gothic novel, which a lot of vampire stories take influence from, especially the most famous, Dracula. We haven't done a reading from this one we've only done one reading. It was like at least a month ago. I had computer issues and whatever, all those reasons. So you're not missing much if you're just popping in now. Let's see, let me switch. It says, according to my Kindle, about 22% through, but that includes like an introduction, probably like 5 introductions. Who knows? Those things get really long. So I don't think we're that far into the story. Let's see. Okay. Do we need to say anything else? Probably not. All right, let's move this around and let's get into the Castle of Otranto. And I'm going to try to keep focus better by crocheting a project today. I took this specific yarn from a blanket that I thrifted, and I took apart. It's all frogged. I don't care about defrogging. And unfortunately, it was like a granny square blanket, so all of the pieces of yarn were literally in pieces. So it's like, I tied them when I rolled it into the ball, but I'm untying them so that I can weave the ends in better. So I've just got like a little bit of yarn here, a little bit of yarn here. I got the rest of the ball until I come up to a next knot that I have to undo. Oi. But we're making a hat. And we're going to make a hat while also reading a Gothic novel on my Kindle on stream for anybody who's interested in hanging out with me and doing this. Okay, I don't exactly remember where we stopped, so I just went like 2 pages ahead of where the Kindle said we stopped. Hopefully that's accurate. Let's, yeah. Grant me patience, said Manfred. These blockheads distract me. Out of my sight, Diego. And thou, Jaquez, tell me in one word, art thou sober? Art thou raving? Thou wast wont to have some sense. Has the other frightened himself in thee too? Speak. What is it he fancies he has seen? Why, my lord, replied Jaquez, trembling, I was going to tell your highness that since the calamitous misfortune of my young lord, God rest his precious soul, not one of us, your highness's faithful servants, indeed we are, my lord, though poor men, I say, not one of us has dared to set a foot about the castle, but 2 together. So Diego and I, thinking that my young lady might be in the great gallery, went up there to look for her, and tell her your highness wanted something to impart to her. Oh, blundering fools, cried Manfred, and in the meantime she has made her escape, because you were afraid of goblins. Why, thou knave, she left me in the gallery. I came from thence myself. For all that, she may be there still for aught I know, said Jacques. But the devil shall have me before I seek her there again. Poor Diego, I do not believe he will ever recover it. Recover what? Said Manfred. Am I to never learn what it is has terrified these rascals? But I lose my time. Follow me, slave. I will see if she is in the gallery. For heaven's sake, my dear good lord, cried Jacques, do not go to the gallery. Satan himself, I believe, is in the chamber next to the gallery. Manfred, who hitherto had treated the terror of his servants as an idle panic, was struck at this new circumstance. He recollected the apparition of the portrait and the sudden closing of the door at the end of the gallery. His voice faltered, and he asked with disorder, "What is in the great chamber?" "My lord," said Jacques, "when Diego and I came into the gallery, he went first, for he said he had more courage than I. So when we came into the gallery, we found nobody. We looked under every bench and stool. Still, we found nobody." "Were all the pictures in their places?" said Manfred. "Yes, my lord," answered Jacques. "But we did not think of looking behind them." "Well, well," said Manfred. "Proceed." "When we came to the door of the great chamber," continued Jacques, "we found it shut." "And could not you open it?" said Manfred. "Oh, yes, my lord. Would to heaven we had not," replied he. "Nay, it was not I neither. It was Diego. He was grown foolhardy, and would go on, though I advised him not. If ever I open a door that is shut again—" "Trifle not," said Manfred, shuddering, "but tell me what you saw in the great chamber on opening the door." "Ay, my lord," said Jacques, "I was behind Diego, but I heard the noise." "Jacques," said Manfred, in a solemn tone of voice, "tell me, I adjure you, thee, by the souls of my ancestors, what was it thou sawest? What was it thou heardest?" "It was Diego saw it, my lord. It was not I," replied Jacques. "I only heard the noise. Diego had no sooner opened the door than he cried out and ran back. I ran back too and said, 'Is it the ghost?'" "The ghost?" "No, no," said Diego, and his hair stood on end. "It is a giant, I believe. He is all clad in armor, for I saw his foot and part of his leg, and they are as large as the helmet below in the court." As he said these words, my lord, we heard a violent motion and the rattling of armor, as if the giant was rising. For Diego has told me since that he believes the giant was lying down, for the foot and leg were stretched at length on the floor. But we could get to the end of the gallery. We heard the door of the great chamber clap behind us, but we did not dare turn back to see if the giant was following us. Yet, now I think on it, we must have heard him if he had pursued us. But for heaven's sake, good my lord, send for the chaplain, and have the castle exorcised, for certain it is enchanted. "Ay, pray do, my lord," cried all the servants at once, "or we must leave your highness's service." "Peace, dotards," replied Manfred, "and follow me. I will know what all this means." Hold on. This part's giving me trouble. "We, my lord," cried they with one voice. "We would not go up to the gallery for your highness's revenue." The young peasant, who had stood silent, now spoke. "Will your highness," said he, "permit me to try this adventure? My life is of consequence to nobody. I fear no bad angel, and have offended no good one." "Your behavior is above your seeming," said Manfred, viewing him with surprise and admiration. "Hereafter I will reward your bravery. But now," continued he with a sigh, "I am so circumstanced that I dare trust to no eyes but my own. However, I give you leave to accompany me." Manfred, when he first followed Isabella from the gallery, had gone directly to the apartment of his wife, concluding the princess had retired thither. Hippolyta, I remember Googling how to say this, and I remember I'm definitely saying it wrong, but I don't remember how to say it right. So we're just going to keep saying it wrong, and you're just going to have to deal with that. Hippolyta, maybe it's like Hippolyta. That sounds more Greek. Hippolyta, who knew his step rose with anxious fondness to meet her lord, whom she had not seen since the death of their son. She would have flown in a transport mix of joy and grief to his bosom, but he pushed her rudely off and said, "Where is Isabella?" "Isabella, my lord," said the astonished Hippolyta. "Yes, Isabella," cried Manfred imperiously. "I want Isabella." "My lord," replied Matilda, who perceived how much his behavior had shocked her mother. "She has not been with us since your highness summoned her to your apartment." "Tell me where she is," said the prince. "I do not want to know where she has been." "My good lord," says Hippolyta, "your daughter tells you the truth. Isabella left us by your command and has not returned since. But, my good lord, compose yourself. Retire to your rest. This dismal day has disordered you. Isabella shall wait your orders in the morning." "What then? You know where she is?" cried Manfred. "Tell me directly, for I will not lose an instant. And you, woman," speaking to his wife, "order your chaplain to attend me forthwith." "Isabella," said Hippolyta calmly, is retired, I suppose, to her chamber. She is not accustomed to watch at this late hour. Gracious my lord," continued she, "let me know what has disturbed you. Has Isabella offended you?" "Trouble me not with questions," said Manfred, "but tell me where she is." "Matilda shall call her," said the princess. "Sit down, my lord, and resume your wonted fortitude." "What, art thou jealous of Isabella," replied he, "that you wish to be present at our interview?" "Good heavens, my lord," said Hippolyta, "what is it your highness means?" "Thou wilt know ere many minutes are past," said the cruel prince. "Send your chaplain to me, and wait my pleasure here." At these words, he flung out of the room in search of Isabella, leaving the amazed ladies thunderstruck with his words and frantic deportment, and lost in vain conjectures on what he was meditating. Manfred was now returning from the vault, attended by the peasant and a few of his servants whom he had obliged to accompany him. He ascended the staircase without stopping till he arrived at the gallery, at the door of which he met Hippolyta and her chaplain. God, that name is giving me trouble for some reason. When Diego had been dismissed by Manfred, he had gone directly to the princess's apartment, with the alarm of what he had seen. Hold on. That excellent lady, who no more than Manfred doubted of the reality of the vision, yet affected to treat it as a delirium of the servant, willing, however, to save her lord from any additional shock, and prepared by a series of griefs not to tremble at any accession to it, she determined to make herself the first sacrifice, if fate had marked the present hour for their destruction. Dismissing the reluctant Matilda to her rest, who in vain sued for leave to accompany her mother and attended only by her chaplain, Hippolyta had visited the gallery and great chamber, and now, with more serenity of soul than she had felt for many hours, she met her lord and assured him that the vision of the gigantic leg and foot was all a fable, and no doubt an impression made by fear, in the dark and dismal hour of the night, of the minds of his servants. She and the chaplain had examined the chamber, and found everything in the usual order. Manfred, though persuaded, like his wife, that the vision had been no work of fancy, recovered a little from the tempest of mind into which so many strange events had thrown him. Ashamed, too, of his inhuman treatment of a princess who returned every injury with new marks of tenderness and duty, he felt returning love forcing itself into his eyes, but not less ashamed of feeling remorse towards one against whom he was inwardly meditating a yet more bitter outrage. He curbed the yearnings of his heart and did not dare to lean even towards pity. The next transition of his soul was to exquisite villainy. Presuming on the unshaken submission of Hippolyta, he flattered himself that she would not only acquiesce with patience to a divorce, but would obey, if it was his pleasure, in endeavoring to persuade Isabella to give him her hand. But ere he could indulge his horrid hope, he reflected that Isabella was not to be found. Coming to himself, He gave orders that every avenue of the castle should be strictly guarded, and charged his domestics on pain of their lives to suffer nobody to pass out. The young peasant, to whom he spoke favorably, he ordered to remain in a small chamber on the stairs, in which there was a pallet bed, and the key of which he took away himself, telling the youth he would talk with him in the morning, then dismissing his attendants, and bestowing a sullen kind of half-nod on Hippolyta, he retired to his own chamber. A lot of that was familiar. I probably already read it. I probably stopped at chapter 2, so my bad if you're watching these in order. Chapter 2. Matilda, who by Hippolyta's order had retired to her apartment, was ill-disposed to take any rest. The shocking fate of her brother had deeply affected her. She was surprised at not seeing Isabella, but the strange words which had fallen from her father in his obscure menace to the princess his wife, accompanied by the most furious behavior, had filled her gentle mind with terror and alarm. She waited anxiously for the return of Bianca, a young damsel that attended her, whom she had sent to learn what was become of Isabella. Bianca soon appeared and informed her mistress of what she had gathered from the servants, that Isabella was nowhere to be found. She related the adventure of the young peasant who had been discovered in the vault, though with many simple additions from the incoherent accounts of the domestics, and she dealt principally on the gigantic leg and foot which had been seen in the gallery chamber. This last circumstance had terrified Bianca so much that she was rejoiced when Matilda told her that she would not go to rest, but would watch till the princess should rise. The young princess wearied herself in conjectures on the flight of Isabella, and on the threats of Manfred to her mother. But what business could he have so urgent with the chaplain? Said Matilda. Does he intend to have my brother's body interred privately in the chapel? Oh, madam, said Bianca, now I guess. As you are become his heiress, he is impatient to have you married. He has always been raving for more sons. I warrant he is now impatient for grandsons. As sure as I live, madam, I shall see you a bride at last. Good madam, you won't cast off your faithful Bianca. You won't put Diana Rosera over me now. You are a great princess. My poor Bianca, said Matilda, how fast your thoughts amble. I, a great princess, what hast thou seen in Manfred's behavior since my brother's death that bespeaks any increase of tenderness to me? No, Bianca, his heart was ever a stranger to me, but he is my father, and I must not complain. Nay, if heaven shuts my father's heart against me, it overpays my little merit in the tenderness of my mother. Oh, that dear mother. Yes, Bianca, 'tis there I feel the rugged temper of Manfred. I can support his harshness to me with patience, but it wounds my soul when I am witness to his causeless severity towards her. There's always one at the end I can never quite get. I have to squint at like an old person. It's gonna be a hat. Let me see if it's head-sized yet. Ooh. I could do another 2 rows. It's a big hat, so I think it should fit a big head. Okay, 1, 2. I really expected there to be a knot much sooner when I started unraveling this. Okay. Oh, madam, said Bianca, all men use their wives so when they are weary of them. And yet you congratulated me. But now, said Matilda, when you fancied my father intended to dispose of me. I would have you a great lady, replied Bianca. Come what will, I do not wish to see you moped in a convent, as you would be if you had your will, and if my lady, your mother, who knows that a bad husband is better than no husband at all, did not hinder you. Bless me, what noise is that? St. Nicholas forgive me, I was but in jest. It is the wind, said Matilda, whistling through the battlements in the tower above. You have heard it 1,000 times. Nay, said Bianca, there was no harm neither in what I said. It is no sin to talk of matrimony. And so, madam, as I was saying, if my Lord Manfred should offer you a handsome young prince for a bridegroom, you would drop him a curtsy and tell him you would rather take the veil? Thank heaven, I am no such danger, said Matilda. You know how many proposals for me he has rejected, and you thank him, like a dutiful daughter, do you, madam? But come, madam, suppose, tomorrow morning, he was to send for you to the great council chamber, and there you should find, at his elbow, a lovely young prince, with large black eyes, a smooth white forehead, and manly curling locks like jet. In short, madam, a young hero resembling the picture of the good Alfonso in the gallery, which you sit and gaze at for hours together. Do not speak lightly of that picture, interrupted Matilda, sighing. I know the adoration with which I look at that picture is uncommon, but I am not in love with a colored panel. The character of that virtuous prince, the veneration with which my mother has inspired me for his memory, the orisons which, I know not why, she has enjoined me to pour forth at his tomb, all have concurred to persuade me that somehow or other my destiny is linked with something related to him. Lord, madam, but how should that be? No. Lord, madam, how should that be? Said Bianca. I have always heard that your family was in no way related to his, and I am sure I cannot conceive why, my lady, the princess, sends you in a cold morning or a damp evening to pray at his tomb. He is no saint by the almanac. If you must pray, why does she not bid you address yourself to your great Saint Nicholas? I am sure he is the saint I pray to for a husband. Perhaps my mind would be less affected, said Matilda, if my mother would explain her reasons to me. But it is the mystery she observes that inspires me with this. I know not what to call it. As she never acts from caprice. I am sure there is some fatal secret at bottom. Nay, I know there is. In her agony of grief for my brother's death, she dropped some words that intimated this as much. Intimated. Oh, dear madam, cried Bianca. What were they? No, said Matilda. If a parent lets fall a word and wishes it recalled, it is not for a child to utter it. What? Was she sorry for what she had said? Asked Bianca. I'm sure, madam, you may trust me. With my own little secrets, when I have any, I may, said Matilda, but never with my mother's. A child ought to have no ears or eyes, but as a parent directs. Well, to be sure, madam, you were born to be a saint, said Bianca, and there is no resisting one's vocation. You will end in a convent, at least. But there is my Lady Isabella would not be so reserved to me. She will let me talk to her of young men, and when a handsome cavalier has come to the castle, she has owned to me that she wished your brother Conrad resembled him. Bianca, said the princess, I do not allow you to mention my friend disrespectfully. Isabella is of a cheerful disposition, but her soul is pure as virtue itself. She knows your idle babbling humor, and perhaps has now and then encouraged it, to divert melancholy and enliven the solitude in which my father keeps us. Blessed Mary, said Bianca, starting, there it is again. Dear madam, do you hear nothing? This castle is certainly haunted. Peace, said Matilda, and listen. I did think I heard a voice, but it must be fancy. Your terrors, I suppose, have infected me. Indeed, madam, said Bianca, half weeping with agony. I am sure I heard a voice. Does anybody lie in the chamber beneath? Said the princess. Nobody has dared to lie there, answered Bianca, since the great astrologer, that was your brother's tutor, drowned himself. For certain, madam, his ghost and the young princes are now met in the chamber below. For heaven's sake, let us fly to your mother's apartment. I charge you not to stir, said Matilda. If they are spirits in pain, we may ease their sufferings by questioning them. They can mean no hurt to us, for we have not injured them. And if they should, shall we be more safe in one chamber than in another? Reach me my beads. We will say a prayer and then speak to them. Oh, dear lady, I would not speak to a ghost for the world, cried Bianca. As she said those words, they heard the casement of the little chamber below Matilda's open. They listened attentively, and in a few minutes they thought they heard a person sing, but could not distinguish the words. Hold on. Finally found a knot. And I have to squint at it. I have so much freaking yarn that I have decided no more yarn until I use this stuff up. So now I'm just making random things. You kind of get to the point when you've made enough clothing and other items as like a crafter that you don't really need any more, you know? I don't need more blankets. I don't need more sweaters. I have what I have, and what I have is fine. So what do I do with all the extra yarn that's just sitting around because I don't want to make a sweater out of it? I don't know. A hat. Okay. Oh, dear lady, I would not speak to a ghost for the world, cried Bianca. And as she said those words, they heard the casement of the little chamber below Matilda's open. They listened attentively, and in a few minutes thought they heard a person sing, but could not distinguish the words. This can be no evil spirit, said the princess in a low voice. It is undoubtedly one of the family. Open the window, and we shall know the voice. I dare not, indeed, madam, said Bianca. Thou art a very fool, said Matilda, opening the window gently herself. The noise the princess made was, however, heard by the person beneath, who stopped, and they concluded had heard the casement open. Is anybody below? Said the princess. If there is, speak. Yes, said an unknown voice. Who is it? Said Matilda. A stranger, replied the voice. What stranger? Said she. And how didst thou come there at this unusual hour, when all the gates of the castle are locked? I am not here willingly, answered the voice, but pardon me, lady, if I have disturbed your rest. I knew not that I was overheard. Sleep has forsaken me. I left a restless couch, and came to waste the irksome hours with gazing on the fair approach of morning, impatient to be dismissed from this castle. Thy words and accents, said Matilda, are of melancholy cast. If thou art unhappy, I pity thee. If poverty afflicts thee, let me know it. I will mention thee to the princess, whose beneficent soul ever melts for the distressed, and she will relieve thee. I am indeed unhappy, said the stranger, and I know not what wealth is. But I do not complain of the lot which heaven has cast for me. I am young and healthy, and am not ashamed of owing my support to myself. Yet think me not proud, or that I disdain your generous offers. I will remember you in my orisons, and will pray for blessings on your gracious self and your noble mistress. If I sigh, lady, it is for others, not for myself. Now I have it, madam, said Bianca, whispering the princess. This is certainly the young peasant, and, by my conscience, he is in love. Well, this is a charming adventure. Do, madam, let us sift him. He does not know you, but takes you for one of my lady Hippolyta's women. Hold on. Okay. Art thou not ashamed, Bianca? Said the princess. What right have we to pry into the secrets of this young man's heart? He seems virtuous and frank, and tells us he is unhappy. Are those circumstances that authorize us to make a property of him? How are we entitled to his confidence? Okay. Lord, madam, how little you know of love, replied Bianca. Why, lovers have no pleasure in equal to talking of their mistress. And would you have me become a peasant's confidant? Said the princess. Well then, let me talk to him, said Bianca. Though I have the honor of being your highness's maid of honor, I was not always so great. Besides, if love levels ranks, it raises them too. I have a respect for any young man in love. Peace, simpleton, said the princess. Though he said he was unhappy, it does not follow that he must be in love. Think of all that has happened today, and tell me if there is no misfortunes but what love causes. Stranger, resumed the princess, if thy misfortunes have not been occasioned by thy own fault, and are within the compass of the Princess Hippolyta's power to redress, I will take upon me to answer that she will be thy protectress. When thou art dismissed from this castle, repair to Holy Father Jerome, at the convent adjoining to the church of St. Nicholas, and make thy story known to him, as far as thou thinkest meet. He will not fail to inform the princess, who is the mother of all that want her assistance. Farewell. It is not seemly for me to hold further converse with a man at this unwonted hour. May the saints guard thee, gracious lady, replied the peasant. But oh, if a poor and worthless stranger might presume to beg a minute's audience further. Am I so happy? The casement is not shut. Might I venture to ask? Speak quickly, said Matilda. The morning dawns apace. Should the laborers come into the fields and perceive us, what wouldst thou ask? I know not how, I know not if I dare, said the young stranger, faltering. Yet the humanity with which you have spoken to me emboldens. Lady, dare I trust you? Heavens, said Matilda, what dost thou mean? With what wouldst thou trust me? Speak boldly if thy secret is fit to be entrusted to a virtuous breast. I would ask, said the peasant, recollecting himself, whether what I have heard from the domestics is true, that the princess is missing from the castle. What imports it to thee to know, replied Matilda. Thy first words bespoke a prudent and becoming gravity. Dost thou come hither to pry into the secrets of Manfred? Adieu, I have been mistaken in thee. Saying these words, she shut the casement hastily, without giving the young man time to reply. I have to concentrate on this one part. I know people have like music in the background, and it would probably help when there's moments of silence to have something playing in the background. But I find that it's harder for me to process what's happening the more noise is going on. And if you want to play lo-fi music in the background, be my guest. I had acted more wisely, said the princess to Bianca with some sharpness, if I had let thee converse with this peasant. His inquisitiveness seems of a piece with thy own. It is not fit for me to argue with your highness, replied Bianca, but perhaps the questions I should have put to him would have been more to the purpose than those you have been pleased to ask him. Oh, no doubt, said Matilda. You are a very discreet personage. May I know what you would have asked him? A bystander often sees more of the game than those that play, answered Bianca. Does your highness think, madam, that this question about my lady Isabella was the result of mere curiosity? No, no, madam. There is more in it than you great folks are aware of. Lopez told me that all the servants believe this young fellow contrived my lady Isabella's escape. Now, pray, madam, observe you and I both know that my lady Isabella never much fancied the prince your brother. Well, he is killed in just a critical minute. He is killed just in a critical minute. I accuse nobody. A helmet falls from the moon. So, my lord, your father says, but Lopez and all the servants say that this young spark is a magician, and stole it from Alfonso's tomb. Have done with this rhapsody of impertinence, said Matilda. Have done with this rhapsody of impertinence. Write that one down to say in an argument. Nay, madam, as you please, cried Bianca. Yet it is very particular, though, that my lady Isabella should be missing the very same day, and that this young sorcerer should be found at the mouth of the trap door. I accuse nobody, but if my young lord came honestly by his death, dare not, on thy duty, said Matilda, to breathe a suspicion on the purity of my dear Isabella's fame. Purity or not purity, said Bianca, gone she is. A stranger is found that nobody knows. You question him yourself. He tells you he is in love or unhappy. It is the same thing. Nay, he owned he was unhappy about others. And is anybody unhappy about another unless they are in love with them? And at the very next word he asks innocently, poor soul, if my lady Isabella is missing. To be sure, said Matilda, thy observations are not totally without foundation. Wait, where's the piece? Isabella's flight amazes me. The curiosity of the stranger is very particular. Yet Isabella never concealed a thought from me. So she told you, to fish out your secrets. But who knows, madam, but this stranger may be some prince in disguise? Do, madam, let me open the window and ask him a few questions. No, replied Matilda, I will ask him myself. If he knows aught of Isabella, he is not worthy I should converse further with him. She was going to open the casement when they heard the bell ring at the postern gate of the castle, which is on the right hand of the tower, where Matilda lay. This prevented the princess from renewing the conversation with the stranger. After continuing silent for some time, I am persuaded, said she to Bianca, that whatever be the cause of Isabella's flight, it had no unworthy motive. If the stranger was accessory to it, she must be satisfied with his fealty and worth. I observed, did not you, Bianca, that his words were tinctured with no uncommon infusion of piety. It was no ruffian's speech. His phrases were becoming a man of gentle birth. I told you, madam, said Bianca, that I was sure he was some prince in disguise. Yet, said Matilda, if he was privy to her escape, how will you account for his not accompanying her in her flight? Why expose himself unnecessarily and rashly to my father's resentment? As for that, madam, replied she, if he could get from under the helmet, he will find ways of eluding your father's anger. I do not doubt, but he has some talisman or other about him. You resolve everything into magic, said Matilda, but a man who has any intercourse with infernal spirits does not dare to make use of those tremendous and holy words which he uttered. Didst thou not observe with what fervor he vowed to remember me to heaven to his prayers? Yes, Isabella was undoubtedly convinced of his piety. Commend me to the piety of a young fellow and a damsel to consult to elope, said Bianca. No, no, madam, my lady Isabella is of another guest's mold than you take her for. She used indeed to sigh and lift her eyes in your company, because she knows you are a saint. But when your back was turned, you wrong her, said Matilda. Isabella is no hypocrite. She has a due sense of devotion, but never affected a call she has not. On the contrary, she always combated my inclination for the cloister, and though I own the mystery she has made to me of her flight confounds me, though it seems inconsistent with the friendship between us, I cannot forget the disinterested warmth with which she always opposed my taking the veil. She wished to see me married, though my dower would have been a loss to her and my brother's children. For her sake, I will believe well of this young peasant. Then you do think there is some liking between them, said Bianca. While she was speaking, a servant came hastily into the chamber and told the princess that the lady Isabella was found. Where? Said Matilda. She has taken sanctuary in St. Nicholas's church, replied the servant. Father Jerome has brought the news himself. He is below with his highness. Where is my mother? Said Matilda. She is in her own chamber, madam, and has asked for you. Okay, one more row, and then we're going to close this baby up. Though, I'll have to do that off stream. Good thing I already have the next yarn I'm going to use for the next hat. Manfred had risen at the first dawn of light and gone to Hippolyta's apartment to inquire if she knew aught of Isabella. While he was questioning her, word was brought that Jerome demanded to speak with him. Manfred, little suspecting the cause of the friar's arrival, and knowing he was employed by Hippolyta and her charities, ordered him to be admitted, intending to leave them together, while he pursued his search after Isabella. "Is your business with me or the princess?" said Manfred. "With both," replied the holy man. "The Lady Isabella—" "What of her?" interrupted Manfred eagerly. "Is at St. Nicholas's altar," replied Jerome. "That is no business of Hippolyta," said Manfred with confusion. "Let us retire to my chamber, father, and inform me how she came thither." "No, my lord," replied the good man, with an air of firmness and authority that daunted even the resolute Manfred, who could not help revering the saint-like virtues of Jerome. "My commission is to both, and with your highness's good liking, in the presence of both I shall deliver it. But first, my lord, I must interrogate the princess, whether she is acquainted with the cause of the Lady Isabella's retirement from your castle." "No, on my soul," said Hippolyta. Does Isabella charge me with being privy to it?" "Father," interrupted Manfred, "I pay due reverence to your holy profession, but I am sovereign here, and will allow no meddling priest to interfere in the affairs of my domestic. If you have aught to say, attend me to my chamber. I do not use to let my wife be acquainted with the secret affairs of my state. They are not within a woman's province." "My lord," said the holy man, "I am no intruder into the secrets of families. My office is to promote peace, to heal divisions, to preach repentance, and teach mankind to curb their headstrong passions. I forgive your highness's uncharitable apostrophe. I know my duty, and am the minister of a mightier prince than Manfred. Hearken to him who speaks through my organs." Manfred trembled with rage and shame. Hippolyta's countenance declared her astonishment and impatience to know where this would end. Her silence more strongly spoke her observance of Manfred. "The Lady Isabella," resumed Jerome, "commends herself to both your highnesses. She thanks both for the kindness with which she has been treated in your castle. She deplores the loss of your son, and her own misfortune in not becoming the daughter of such wise and noble princes, whom she shall always respect as parents. She prays for uninterrupted union and felicity between you." Manfred's color changed. "But as it is no longer possible for her to be allied to you, she entreats your consent to remain in sanctuary till she can learn news of her father, or, by the certainty of his death, be at liberty, with the approbation of her guardians, to dispose of herself in suitable marriage." "I shall give no such consent," said the prince, "but insist on her return to the castle without delay. I am answerable for her person to her guardians, and I will not brook her being in any hands but my own. Your highness will recollect whether that can any longer be proper," replied the friar. "I want no monitor," said Manfred, coloring. "Isabella's conduct leaves room for strange suspicions, and that young villain, who was at least the accomplice of her flight, if not the cause of it." "The cause," interrupted Jerome. "Was a young man the cause?" "This is not to be borne," cried Manfred. "Am I to be bearded in my own palace by an insolent monk? Thou art privy, I guess, to their armors." "I would pray to heaven to clear up your uncharitable surmises," said Jerome. "If your highness were not satisfied in your conscience how unjustly you accuse me, I do pray to heaven to pardon that uncharitableness, and I implore your highness to leave the princess at peace in that holy place, where she is not liable to be disturbed by such vain and worldly fantasies as discourses of love from any man." "Can't not to me," said Manfred, "but return and bring the princess to her duty." "It is my duty to prevent her return hither," said Jerome. "She is where orphans and virgins are safest from the snares and wiles of this world, and nothing but a parent's authority shall take her thence." "I am her parent," cried Manfred, "and demand her." "She wished to have you for her parent," said the friar, "but heaven that forbid but heaven that forbade that connection has forever dissolved all ties betwixt you. I announce to your highness, stop, audacious man, said Manfred, and dread my displeasure. Holy father, said Hippolyta, it is your office to be no respecter of persons. You must speak as your duty prescribes, but it is my duty to hear nothing that it pleases not my lord I should hear. Attend the prince to his chamber. I will retire to my oratory and pray to the Blessed Virgin to inspire you with her holy counsels, and to restore the heart of my gracious lord to its wonted peace and gentleness. Excellent woman, said the friar, my lord, I attend your pleasure. Manfred, accompanied by the friar, passed to his own apartment, where shutting the door, I perceive, father, said he, that Isabella has acquainted you with my purpose. Now hear my resolve and obey. Reasons of state, most urgent reasons, demand that I should have a son. It is in vain to expect an heir from Hippolyta. I have made choice of Isabella. You must bring her back, and you must do more. I know the influence you have with Hippolyta. Her conscience is in your hands. She is, I allow, a faultless woman. Her soul is set on heaven, and scorns the little grandeur of this world. You can withdraw her from it entirely. Persuade her to consent to the dissolution of our marriage, and to retire into a monastery. She shall endow one if she will, and she shall have the means of being as liberal to your order as she or you can wish. Thus you will divert the calamities that are hanging over our heads, and have the merit of saving the principality of Otranto from destruction. You are a prudent man, and though the warmth of my temper betrayed me into some unbecoming expressions, I honor your virtue, and wish to be indebted to you for the repose of my life and the preservation of my family. The will of heaven be done, said the friar. I am but its worthless instrument. It makes use of my tongue to tell thee, prince, of thy unwarrantable designs. The injuries of the virtuous Hippolyta have mounted to the throne of pity. By my thou art reprimanded for thy adulterous intention of repudiating her. By me thou art warned not to pursue the incestuous design on thy contracted daughter. Heaven that delivered her from thy fury, when the judgments so recently fallen on thy house ought to have inspired thee with other thoughts, will continue to watch over her. Even I, a poor and despised friar, am able to protect her from thy violence. I, sinner as I am, and uncharitably reviled by your highness as an accomplice of I know not what armors, scorn the allurements with which it has pleased thee to tempt mine honesty. I love my order. I honor devout souls. I respect the piety of thy princess. But I will not betray the confidence she reposes in me, nor serve even the cause of religion by foul and sinful compliances. But, forsooth, the welfare of the state depends on your highness having a son. Heaven mocks the short-sighted views of man. So yestermorn, whose house was so great, so flourishing as Manfred's, where is young Conrad now? My lord, I respect your tears, but I mean not to check them. Let them flow, prince. They will weigh more with heaven toward the welfare of thy subjects than a marriage which, founded on lust or policy, could never prosper. The specter, which passed from the race of Alfonso to thine, cannot be preserved by a match which the church will never allow. If it is the will of the Most High that Manfred's name must perish, resign yourself, my lord, to its decrees, and thus deserve a crown that can never pass away. Come, my lord, I like this sorrow. Let us return to the princess. She is not apprised of your cruel intentions, nor did I mean more than to alarm you. You saw with what gentle patience, with what efforts of love she heard, she rejected hearing, the extent of your guilt. I know she longs to fold you in her arms and assure you of her unalterable affection. Father, said the prince, you mistake my compunction. True, I shall honor Hippolyta's virtues. I think her a saint, and wish it were for my soul's health to tie faster the knot that has united us. But alas, Father, you know not the bitterest of my pangs. It is some time that I have had scruples on the legality of our union. Hippolyta is related to me in the 4th degree. It is true, we had a dispension, but I have been informed that she had also been contracted to another. That this it is that sits heavy at my heart. To this state of unlawful wedlock I impute the visitation that has fallen on me in the death of Conrad. Ease my conscience of this burden. Dissolve our marriage and accomplish the work of godliness, which your divine exhortations have commenced in my soul. Hold on. Starting a new hat. Let's go. How cutting was the anguish which the good man felt when he perceived this turn in the wily prince. He trembled for Hippolyta, whose ruin he saw was determined, and he feared if Manfred had no hope of recovering Isabella, that his impatience for a son would direct him to some other object, who might be equally proof against the temptation of Manfred's rank. For some time the holy man remained absorbed in thought. At length, conceiving some hope from delay, he thought the wisest conduct would be to prevent the prince from despairing of recovering Isabella. Her the friar knew he could dispose, from her affection to Hippolyta, and from the aversion she had expressed to him for Manfred's addresses, to second his views, till the censures of the church could be fulminated against a divorce. With this intention, as if struck with the prince's scruples, he at length said, My lord, I have been pondering on what your highness has said, and if in truth it is delicacy of conscience that is the real motive of your repugnance to your virtuous lady, far be it from me to endeavor to harden your heart. The church is an indulgent mother. Unfold your griefs to her. She alone can administer comfort to your soul, either by satisfying your conscience or upon examination of your scruples, by setting you at liberty, and indulging you in the lawful means of continuing your lineage. In the latter case, if the Lady Isabella can be brought to consent. No, not even close. Manfred, who concluded that he had either overreached the good man or that his first warmth had been but a tribute paid to appearance, was overjoyed at this sudden turn, and repeated the most magnificent promises if he should succeed by the friar's mediation. The well-meaning priest suffered him to deceive himself, fully determined to traverse his views instead of seconding them. Since we now understand one another, resumed the prince, I expect, father, that you satisfy me in one point. Who is the youth that I found in the vault? He must have been privy to Isabella's flight. Tell me, truly, is he her lover, or is he an agent for another's passion? I have often suspected Isabella's indifference to my son. 1,000 circumstances crowd on my mind that confirm that suspicion. She herself was so conscious of it that while I discoursed her in the gallery, she outran my suspicions and endeavored to justify herself from coldness to Conrad. The friar, who knew nothing of the youth but what he had learnt occasionally from the princess, ignorant was what was become of him, and not sufficiently reflecting on the impetuosity of Manfred's temper, conceived that it might not be amiss to sow the seeds of jealousy in his mind. Oh no, this part's going to be hard to do while reading. They might be turned to some use hereafter, either by prejudicing the prince against Isabella, if he persisted in that union, or by diverting his attention to a wrong scent, and employing his thoughts on the visionary intrigue, prevent his engaging in any new pursuit. With this unhappy policy, he answered in a manner to confirm Manfred in the belief of some connection between Isabella and the youth. Oh dear. The prince, whose passions wanted little fuel to throw them into a blaze, fell into a rage at the idea of what the friar suggested. I will fathom to the bottom of this intrigue, cried he, and quitting Jerome abruptly, with a command to remain there till his return, He hastened to the great hall of the castle and ordered the peasants to be brought before him. My goodness, how long is this chapter? Chapter 3. Can I find my way back? Yes. Click, 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 click. Oh goodness, it's now Bianca. Oh goodness, why did I do this? Because I wanted to know how much was left. God, they talked for a while. Why did I do this? Now I don't know where I am. Oh, why did I do this? I should have bookmarked it first. I just want to crochet. Where am I? I don't even remember the last sentence I read. Oh goodness. He hastened to the great and ordered the peasant to be brought before him. No. Okay. The friar who knew nothing of the youth but what he had learned occasionally from the princess, ignorant what had become of him, and not sufficiently reflecting on the impetuosity of Manfred's temper, conceived that it might not be amiss to sow the seeds of jealousy in his mind. They might be turned to some use hereafter, either by prejudicing the prince against Isabella, if he persisted in that union, or by diverting his attention to the wrong scent, and employing his thoughts on a visionary intrigue, prevent his engaging in any new pursuit. I remember that sentence. God. With this unhappy policy, he answered in a manner to confirm Manfred in the belief of some connection between Isabella and the youth. The prince, whose passions wanted little fuel to throw them into a blaze, fell into a rage at the idea of what the friar suggested. I will fathom to the bottom of this intrigue, cried he, and quitting Jerome abruptly, with a command to remain there till his return, he hastened to the great hall of the castle and ordered the peasant to be brought before him. Thou hardened young impostor, said the prince, as soon as he saw the youth. What becomes of thy boasted veracity now? It was Providence, was it, and the light of the moon, that discovered the lock of the trap-door to thee? Tell me, audacious boy, who art thou, and how long thou hast been acquainted with the princess? And take care to answer with less equivocation than thou didst last night, or tortures shall wring the truth from thee. The young man, perceiving that his share in the flight of the princess was discovered, and concluding that anything he should say could no longer be of any service or detriment to her, replied, I am no impostor, my lord, nor have I deserved opprobrious language. What does opprobrious mean? Oh. Expressing scorn or criticism. Harsh criticism or censure. I am no impostor, my lord, nor have I observed opprobrious language. I answered to every question your highness put to me last night with the same veracity that I shall speak now, and that will not be from fear of your tortures, but because my soul abhors a falsehood. Please to repeat your questions, my lord. I am ready to give you all the satisfaction in my power. You know my questions, replied the prince, and only want time to prepare an evasion. Speak directly. Who art thou, and how long hast thou been known to the princess? I am a laborer at the next village, said the peasant. My name is Theodore. The princess found me in the vault last night. Before that hour I never was in her presence. I may believe as much or as little as I please of this, said Manfred, but I will hear thy own story before I examine into the truth of it. Tell me, what reason did the princess give thee for making her escape? Thy life depends on thy answer. She told me, replied Theodore, that she was on the brink of destruction, and that if she could not escape from the castle, she was in danger in a few moments of being made miserable forever. And on the slight foundation, on a silly girl's report, said Manfred, thou didst hazard my displeasure? I fear no man's displeasure, said Theodore. when a woman in distress puts herself under my protection. During this examination, Matilda was going to the apartment of Hippolyta at the upper end of the hall where Manfred sat was a boarded gallery with latticed windows, through which Matilda and Bianca were to pass. Hearing her father's voice and seeing the servants assembled around him, she stopped to learn the occasion. The prisoner soon drew her attention, the steady and composed manner in which he answered, and the gallantry of his last reply, which were the first words she heard distinctly, interested her in his favor. His person was noble, handsome, and commanding, even in that situation, but his countenance soon engrossed her whole care. "Heavens! Bianca," said the princess softly, "do I dream? Or is not that youth the exact resemblance of Alfonso's picture in the gallery?" She could say no more, for her father's voice grew louder at every word. "This bravado," said he, "surpasses all thy former insolence. Thou shalt experience the wrath with which thou darest to trifle." "Seize him," commanded Manfred, "and bind him. The first news the princess hears of her champion shall be that he has lost his head for her sake. The injustice of which thou art guilty towards me." Sorry, I messed up a thing. "The injustice of which thou art guilty towards me," said Theodore, "convinces me that I have done a good deed in delivering the princess from thy tyranny. May she be happy, whatever becomes of me." "This is a lover," cried Manfred in a rage. "A peasant within sight of death is not animated by such sentiments. Tell me, rash boy, who thou art, or the rack shall force thy secret from thee." "Thou hast threatened me with death already," said the youth. "For the truth I have told thee, if that is all the encouragement I am to expect for sincerity. I am not tempted to indulge thy vain curiosity farther." "Then thou wilt not speak?" said Manfred. "I will not," replied he. "Bear him away into the courtyard," said Manfred. "I will see his head this instant severed from his body." Matilda fainted at hearing those words. Bianca shrieked and cried, "Help! Help! The princess is dead!" "Yes, silly girl. She just died right there on the spot." Manfred started at this ejaculation and demanded what was the matter. The young peasant, who heard it too, was struck with horror and asked eagerly the same question, but Manfred ordered him to be hurried into the court and kept there for execution, till he had informed himself of the cause of Bianca's shrieks. When he learned the meaning, he treated it as a womanish panic, and ordering Matilda to be carried to her apartment, he rushed into the court, and calling for one of his guards, bade Theodore kneel down and prepare to receive the fatal blow. The undaunted youth received the bitter sentence with a resignation that touched every heart but Manfred's. He wished earnestly to know the meaning of the words he had heard relating to the princess, but fearing to exasperate the tyrant more against her, he desisted. The only boon he deigned to ask was that he might be permitted to have a confessor, to make his peace with heaven. Manfred, who hoped by the confessor's means to come at the youth's history, readily granted his request, and being convinced that Father Jerome was now in his interest, he ordered him to be called and shrive the prisoner. The holy man, who had little foreseen the catastrophe that his imprudence occasioned, fell on his knees to the prince, and adjured him in the most solemn manner not to shed innocent blood. He accused himself in the bitterest terms for his indiscretion, endeavored to disculpate the youth, and left no method untried to soften the tyrant's rage. Manfred, more incensed than appeased by Jerome's intercession, whose retraction now made him suspect he had been imposed upon by both, commanded the friar to do his duty, telling him he would not allow the prisoner many minutes for confession. Goodness gracious. Great balls of fire. "Nor do I ask many, my lord," said the unhappy young man. "My sins, thank heaven, have not been numerous, nor exceed what might be expected at my years. Dry your tears, good father, and let us dispatch. This is a bad world, nor have I had cause to leave it with regret. O wretched youth, said Jerome, how canst thou bear the sight of me with patience? I am thy murderer. It is I have brought this dismal hour upon thee. I forgive thee from my soul, said the youth, as I hope heaven will pardon me. Hear my confession, friar. No, hear my confession, father, and give me thy blessing. How can I prepare thee for thy passage as I ought, said Jerome. Thou canst not be saved without pardoning thy foes, and canst thou forgive that impious man there? I can, said Theodore. I do. And does not this touch thee, cruel prince? Said the friar. I sent for thee to confess him, said Manfred sternly, not to plead for him. Thou didst first incense me against him. His blood be upon thy head. It will, said the good man, in an agony of sorrow. Thou and I must never hope to go where this blessed youth is going. Dispatch, said Manfred. I am no more to be moved by the whining of priests than by the shrieks of women. What, said the youth, is it possible that my fate could have occasioned what I heard? Is the princess then again in thy power? Thou dost but remember me of my wrath, said Manfred. Prepare thee, for this moment is thy last. The youth, who felt his indignation rise, and who was touched with the sorrow which he saw he had infused into all the spectators, as well as into the friar, suppressed his emotions, and putting off his doublet and unbuttoning his collar, knelt down to his prayers. As he stooped, his shirt slipped down below his shoulder and discovered the mark of a bloody arrow. Gracious heaven, cried the holy man, starting. What do I see? It is my child, my Theodore. The passions that ensued must be conceived, that cannot be painted. The tears of the assistants were suspended by wonder rather than stopped by joy. They seemed to inquire in the eyes of their lord what they ought to feel. Surprise, doubt, tenderness, respect succeeded each other in the countenance of the youth. He received with modest submission the effusion of the old man's tears and embraces. Yet, afraid of giving a loose to hope, and suspecting from what had passed the inflexibility of Manfred's temper, he cast a glance towards the prince, as if to say, Canst thou be unmoved at such a scene as this? Manfred's heart was capable of being touched. He forgot his anger and his astonishment, yet his pride forbade his owning himself affected. He even doubted whether this discovery was not a contrivance of the friar to save the youth. What may this mean, said he. How can he be thy son? Is it consistent with thy profession or reputed sanctity to avow a peasant's offspring for the fruit of thy irregular armors? O God, said the holy man, dost thou question his being mine? Could I feel the anguish I do if I were not his father? Spare him, good prince, spare him, and revile me as thou pleasest. Spare him, cried the attendants. For this good man's sake. Peace, said Manfred sternly. I must know more ere I am disposed to pardon. A saint's bastard may be no saint himself. Drinking some water. Tea, actually. Cold tea. Injurious lord, said Theodore, add not insult to cruelty. If I am this venerable man's son, though no prince, as thou art, know the blood that flows in my veins. Yes, said the friar, interrupting him, his blood is noble, nor is he that abject thing, my lord, you speak him. He is my lawful son, and Sicily can boast a few houses more ancient than that of Falconara. But alas, my lord, what is blood? What is nobility? We are all reptiles, miserable, sinful creatures. It is piety alone that can distinguish us from the dust whence we sprung, and whither we must return. Truce to your sermon, said Manfred. You forget. You are no longer Friar Jerome, but the Count of Falconara. Let me know your history. You will have time to moralize hereafter, if you should not happen to obtain the grace of that sturdy criminal there. Mother of God, said the friar, is it possible my lord can refuse a father the life of his only, his long-lost child? Trample me, my lord, scorn, afflict me, accept my life for his, but spare my son. Thou canst feel then, said Manfred, what it is to lose an only son? A little hour ago thou didst preach up resignation to me. My house, if fate so pleased, must perish, but the Count of Falconara. Alas, my lord, said Jerome, I confess I have offended, but aggravate not an old man's sufferings. I boast not of my family, nor think of such vanities. It is nature that pleads for this boy. It is the memory of the dear woman that bore me. That dear woman that bore him. Is she, Theodore? Is she dead? Her soul has long been with the blessed, said Theodore. Oh, how? Cried Jerome. Tell me, no, she is happy. Thou art all my care now. Most dread lord, will you grant me my poor boy's life? Return to thy convent, answered Manfred. Conduct the princess hither. Obey me in what else thou knowest, and I promise thee the life of thy son. Oh, my lord, said Jerome, is my honesty the price I must pay for this dear youth's safety? For me, cried Theodore, let me die 1,000 deaths rather than stain thy conscience. What is it the tyrant should exact of thee? Is the princess still safe from his power? Protect her, thou venerable old man, and let all the weight of his wrath fall on me. Jerome endeavored to check the impetuosity of the youth, and ere Manfred could reply, the trampling of horses was heard, and a brazen trumpet, which hung without the gate of the castle, was suddenly sounded. At the same instant, the sable plumes on the enchanted helmet, which still remained at the other end of the court, were tempestuously agitated and nodded thrice, as if bowed by some invisible wearer. End of chapter 2. Good. This is very much a soap opera. What do you mean the friar has a son? I don't even remember that being a problem. Has he even existed before for the second chapter? My goodness. And it turns out the friar's baby mama is alive. She's just been in a coma the whole time. But no, it's not her. It's her twin. Her twin was a coma. She is dead, but she doesn't know that. She has no memories. So she's just gonna go around not realizing she's pretending to be a dead person because she has no memory. Goodness gracious. It just keeps going. Oh, soap operas. Okay. We've done enough for tonight, I think. It's been about an hour. We did a whole chapter. That was a lot of reading. And we finished the hat and started a smaller one for a child, possibly. I say that like it doesn't go all the way down here. I keep making hats about my size, but if I make it smaller, around my knee maybe, I can give it to a child at some point. Just go up to a random child and be like, hey, would you just hold the hat up and be like, would this fit your head? A random child. Oh, good. Okay. Thank you for being here. I will do this again at some point. I had to skip last week's Sunday stream because there was an issue. So we're doing this one. I don't know why I said that. Thank you for being here. I appreciate it a lot, especially if you made it all the way to the end. Even an hour is a long time for a long gothic novel that rambles on and on and on like a soap opera. I will do this again at some point, but these midweek streams are not scheduled. So they sort of happen. I can't tell you when. I will try to put up a scheduled post so at least you see it coming, if not a day before, an hour before. But yeah, we are going to eventually finish this gothic novel, and we will continue to read short stories on Sunday. If you like vampires, welcome to my book club. You can't leave now. We're vampires. Sorry, you can't leave now. See you around. Bye. Good night. I have to wave so I know I can end stream.